under ordinary circumstances, in a sane and rational world, the idea that someone would sneak into your home, I mean, and just brave enough to even creep down the chimney, sneak into your home,
eat cookies and milk
eat
from
your
your refrigerator,
food, drink your drink,
counter.
Go around, and then he's always watching you. He knows,
Creeper.
He knows your behavior. He knows if you've been bad or good.
Stalker.
I mean, under any other circumstances, that story would be terrifying.
Right out of Nightmares on the Lost Highway.
And yet every year, we tell this story to children. And all year long, we expect them to be worried that they're being watched by this creepy old man.
It's the perfect bedtime story.
And yet we all agree that this is a perfectly normal, reasonable, safe, regular story that we perpetuate every year at Christmas time. If you've seen the title of the episode, I mean, obviously you know where I'm going. There's been enough hints by now. But, there's a story to Santa Claus that we know the Coca-Cola, jolly fat man in the red suit that brings you gifts. But there's more to the Santa story. We touched on it a couple of years ago in our Christmas episode with it, but there is a lot to that story, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. This is our Christmas episode for this year. This is the origins and evolution of Santa Claus.
Well, Santa Claus, and I also threw in some of the other traditions of Christmas and how we got here.
From a child born into this world, we are taught what to believe. Closed-minded we become, fearful to be deceived. Still we desire to know what lies beyond that locked door. The art of the storyteller, conjuring tales of legend and lore. History hidden, lost knowledge, things forgotten and the unknown. These are the things that direct us and will set the tone. Welcome, friends, to another episode of Nightmares on the Lost Highway.
So when you talk about Santa, you think of a portly, jolly, white-bearded old man wearing a red coat with white fur collar and cuffs, red pants with white fur cuffs, a red hat trimmed with white fur, a broad black leather belt and boots, carrying a bag full of presents made by elves to be delivered to all the good little boys and girls on Christmas Eve, in a sleigh pulled by 8 flying reindeer. That's what you think of when you think of Santa.
Absolutely.
But the tradition and the ideas of Santa go back way, way farther than a lot of people probably realize. Of course, the name for Santa Claus has its roots in the informal Dutch name for St. Nicholas, Sinterklaas. Sinterklaas was a 4th century Greek saint, and I'll touch on his story a little bit later. But the current image of Santa as a jolly, chubby old man comes from the 19th century, pretty recent as far as things go, from both political cartoonist Thomas Nast and the book 'Twas the Night Before Christmas by Clement Clarke Moore. But what inspired Nast and Moore? Where did Santa really get started? One possible explanation is you're gonna have to cast your mind way, way, way back to the Vikings. Now, what does Santa and the Vikings have to do with one another? One possible inspiration, and I say possible, the experts argue that maybe not.
This is going to be one of those alleged kind of things. Yes.
One possible inspiration is the Norse god Odin. If you've watched any of the Marvel Thor movies, you know Odin is the father of Thor. He's the
raven on the shoulder and an eye patch and a long flowing beard.
Yeah. He, of course, based on just that description, he does share some characteristics with our current image of Santa. Of course, Odin didn't wear red. Odin was primarily known to wear a blue cloak, an older man, great white beard, and he would be seen flying through the night sky during the winter solstice, or Yule as it was known.
Pulled by goats.
That's one version of the story, pulled by a couple of goats. Now, Yule, of course, even today, the term Yuletide is almost synonymous with Christmas time. Yule was a celebration of the god Odin and was a time of feasting, drinking, and merriment.
The old Yule log.
Have a lot of Christmas parties. Odin would lead a hunting party known as the Wild Hunt through the sky, riding across the sky on his 8-legged horse named Sleipnir, which the 8-legged horse at some point became 8 tiny reindeer. but the wild hunt would descend from the sky to punish the wicked. Well, not really handing out gifts, but good little girls and boys were okay.
There's a list at least to check.
Sleipnir was said to be able to leap great distances, almost as if flying across the sky.
Very
Like a
similar
reindeer.
to reindeer.
Now, one tradition would have children leave their boots by the chimney filled with carrots and hay.
What? That's like stockings.
As a treat for Sleipnir, he would come down and he would nibble these little treats. And some say that if you left treats for Sleipnir, Odin would leave a little gift in those boots after they were emptied. Also, Odin had 2 ravens, I think Hunin and Munin, if I remember correctly. And they would fly about and they would perch on the chimneys of houses
Chimneys?
to listen to those within, to
Stalkers.
determine who had been good or bad. Now, Santa's traditional colors, red and white, could have come from another ancient tradition from the older Slavic deity known more or less as Father Winter, I think is the commonly accepted name. These colors, red and white, are commonly associated with the Amanita muscari, an hallucinogenic mushroom with a red cap dotted with white
Red
little
cap
dots.
mushrooms.
Now, this mushroom was very important to early pagan civilizations and even to the early Christians, and it played a large role in Siberian village life. Now, Siberia, of course, rough, harsh terrain, and in the middle of winter, I can imagine almost unsurvivable. I'd like to imagine, north of the wall in Game of Thrones, just
Yeah, you don't want to go
heaps of snow.
outside.
Now, during midwinter, the local shaman would usually go and gather enough mushrooms for the whole village community. And then he would travel house to house with a large sack, distributing mushrooms to the homes in the village. Now, of course, this is Siberia. During the winter, snow just piled insanely high, so a lot of times the shaman wouldn't necessarily be able to get to the door of the house. So he would sometimes have to climb atop the snow and climb up to the roof and drop the mushrooms down through a hole in the hut where the smoke would come out from their cook fires. Now, villagers would take these mushrooms. They would hang them in a sock by the fire to dry, and after they were dried, they would consume the mushrooms on the winter solstice. And I can only imagine that would be quite an interesting day indeed.
Party.
Now, these mushrooms were known to commonly grow beneath pine trees. And so there you
There's the
have
pine
the pine
reference.
tree, the Christmas tree.
Bill was talking about the Northlands and the Yule. That would have been during the time of the winter solstice. Brought a blanket of snow and darkness upon their lands. It was a time to be prepared for, when hunting and fishing and exploration would come to an abrupt halt. A time to pull close together, prepare for the long, hard winter, hoping, praying that you had enough food and rations for you and your family and your livestock to get you through these cold, dark months. A part of the celebration of the Norse fathers and sons would be go out in their clans deep into the woods and drag back the largest wood log that they could possibly carry. Now, this log would be lit on fire during the Great Winter Solstice celebration, which lasted 12 days. Much drinking, partying, eating, much celebration. This 12-day event was held inside for obvious reasons of the cold. The celebration was also kind of a way to almost mock that cold darkness that lay outside of the home, which they believed also housed ghostly spirits that would approach their threshold and would freeze their windows and possibly even claw trying to get inside. Now, it was believed this burning log, the Yule log, represented obviously heat and warmth, but every flickering spark that would float up to the heavens would mean the birth of a sheep or a pig later that spring to the clan, therefore issuing kind of a feeling of comfort and fertility. This log became, of course, known as the Yule log. Another early origin is the evergreen tree. Now, Bill mentioned that briefly. It was the only local tree to the Norse that could possibly survive being brought indoors during the winter, and it stayed green, at least to some degree, through those cold winter months ahead. It was kind of a reassurance that even in the dark winter, some things could survive, giving hope for future prosperity. Families would live in these tight spaces, often sharing giant beds for warmth one to another. And it was also a time when exploring the Vikings, the shield maidens, the husbands, the wives, would all have kind of what we would call downtime together indoors to spend with their family. Now, during this same time frame, since time provided, they would work on works of art, sculpting, carving. A little bit of baby making might also go on since we had all this going on and we were trapped inside. Therefore, we have a connection to this date or this time frame associated with the birth of a baby, often living among the livestock, which was also brought into the Vikings' family homes because livestock put off heat. That helped keep you warm and helped to keep you from freezing. Now, this brings me to my next point, and it is, I think, arguably one of the hottest topics in the past 20 years, and that is December 25th, Christmas. Is it about Santa? Is it about the birth of Christ? Yes, but there's more to it.
My understanding is that Christ wouldn't have actually been born on December 25th.
You are correct,
I believe. It would have been in April or something like that. But that it was co-opted because this was such a common tradition almost around the world. So,
let me touch base. It's a story we all know very well, preserved in scripture and film and hymns. Joseph and a very pregnant Mary were turned away when there was no room for them in the inn. They sought refuge in a manger of a stable where the Christ child would be born. Shepherds who were in the field tending their sheep as well as wise men from afar followed the brightest star across the night sky in order to bring gifts and to pay homage. And that is the holiday we celebrate on December 25th. But was that really when Jesus was born? While the answer to that question is not clearly ever stated anywhere in the Bible or any other known manuscript, looking at history, it would appear that that date, that month, that time of the season would be very, very unlikely for the true birth date of Jesus Christ. The Bible scripture story tells us the shepherds tended their flocks in the field, and then they followed the brightest star. Okay, so based on that, it was night. We had a star that were following it. Obviously, to be able to follow that. And it most likely would have been in the spring or summer months when the weather was still mild. So shepherds would commonly camp literally in the field alongside their flocks of sheep, try to help protect them and keep them safe. If this had occurred anywhere around December, it would have been custom to have those flocks of sheep sheltered from the winter elements, protecting your livestock and your livelihood. Essentially, shepherd or sheep would not want to be out in the winter night exposed or simply anytime during that season of the year. So where did this December 25th date come from? Well, I'm going to get into that a bit later, but I wanted to tie that into the whole Santa Claus story.
Well, Santa's reputation as a gift giver can more concretely be traced to Saint Nicholas, a 4th century Greek Orthodox bishop who lived in the city of Myra, which would be located in modern-day Turkey. Now, physically speaking, he had a long beard and he was known to wear a long cloak of red. Nicholas was renowned for his generosity, his secret gift giving to the poor, and his deep love of children. One particular story that's pretty commonly associated with Nicholas is when he presented 3 impoverished daughters of a pious Christian man with dowries so that they would not need to become prostitutes. Now, there's a couple of different versions of the story. One version says he dumped a sack full of gold down the father's chimney. Another version says that he would sort of walk by the house and casually toss a little sack of gold through the window so that it would land in the stockings hung by the fire. So, you see a couple of tie-ins to the Santa story there. Now, as the word of St. Nicholas's charity and generosity spread, the idea of secretly giving gifts to others grew into a tradition all its own, so it took on a life of its own. And as people traveled the world, they took the tradition with them. By the Middle Ages, a tradition in his honor had been started in Europe where children were left gifts on the evening of December 5th so that they would wake up and find them on December 6th, recognized as St. Nicholas's feast day and the anniversary of his death. After his death, Nicholas would be canonized and become one of the most prominent non-biblical saints in the Catholic Church, and he would commonly be known as Nicholas the Wonder Worker due to the numerous miracles attributed to him, including calming stormy seas, chopping down a tree possessed by a demon, and saving 3 innocent soldiers from being put to death. Apparently, that particular story, he ran out as the headsman was going to behead these guys and just took his sword from him and stood his ground until they were spared. Nicholas would become the patron saint of many groups, including archers, sailors, brewers, children, pawnbrokers, ships, islands, all cities with harbors, and students, as well as being the patron saint of the cities of Amsterdam and Moscow.
This guy deserved a raise.
Yeah. In the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and northern France, St. Nicholas was known as Sinterklaas. And Sinterklaas would become his own sort of character for their Christmas traditions in those areas. He was said to have a long white beard, wear a red cape over his bishop's garments, similar to what the real St. Nicholas would have worn. He was also said to carry a ceremonial shepherd's staff and a big red book of children's names, listing which children had been naughty or nice that year.
There's the list again.
Now, Sinterklaas rode a white horse and had helpers to tell him whether kids had been naughty or nice as well. During the 16th century Protestant Reformation, Martin Luther discouraged the veneration of saints to prevent them from gaining a cult-like following. So the church urged parents to give gifts on Christmas Eve instead of December 5th, to more associate the practice with Jesus' birth than Nicholas's feast day. However, many Christians continued to recognize St. Nicholas or Sinterklaas as the face of the gift-giving tradition across Europe.
Now, winter did not have the same chilling effect in all areas of the world, such as the Vikings, but Rome was on one of the more tropical climates. Now, 1 month before the winter solstice, however, the Romans would start their own festive celebration, lasting a full month. It was a drunken parade of costumes and orgies, resembling something more of a New Orleans Mardi Gras than anything we would associate with Christmas today. The event was called Saturnalia, named after the god Saturn, who was known as the god of plenty. Now, this leaned to the excessive drink, feast, and merriment. It was a quite interesting month, a long circus of events. It not only allowed, but really demanded costumes and disguises for many reasons. Most important, I would assume, is a disguise for all the things that you might partake of during the period of that month and not have something to have to escape from after that. We'll put it that way. Now, what I mean by that, getting into this, it was a time when Rome was flipped upside down. Literally, slaves would dress up and take the role of their master, and the masters took the role of their slaves. This was encouraged and actually invited for the entire month. The master would eagerly serve the slave, and then the slave would give the master orders, but obviously disguised one as another. It was an unusual time of grounding, and perhaps when we get the saying, walk a mile in their shoes, where freedom and the disarray coexisted and provided hope for the future. Rome also had other festivals and celebrations, some of which were focused around children, associated with fertility celebrations. In some of these celebrations, children led parades, performed shows, and were given many temporary rights of the city, almost like they were adults. They were also bestowed with gifts upon the Roman children. Now, not everyone in Rome participated in some of this wild Mardi Gras ruckus. The elitists of Rome, they had a different way to do things. They chose to celebrate this time of year in a much more somber way. They chose at this time to pay tribute to Mithra, the unconquerable sun. Again, a reference of dark and light, kind of that struggle of the season of the year, leading into the winter solstice. The Roman elitists believed by paying tribute to Mithra, this deity would protect them from the dark months ahead and lead them into the sun for the new farming season. Now, since this was only the very elite, wealthiest of the Romans, this was a quite small quantity of the population, essentially. But it formed a small sect. The sect of Mithra, as it was known, the Son of God, celebrated right up to December 25th, the believed actual birth date of Mithra themselves. This is actually the first reference we have directly to the date of December 25th. Another, I thought, interesting tidbit to the story of Mithra is the sun god. So, twist on wording, Mithra, the sun god. Eons later, we celebrate the Son of God, Jesus Christ, being born on the very same day. Number 2 has to do with the birth of Mithra. who according to legend was born from a rock in the fields where sheep were kept. The infant deity, Mithra, according to legend, was found by shepherds in its infant form, surrounded by sheep laying in the crevice of a giant split rock. Sound a little familiar to another story of shepherds? While Romans were worshiping the sun god, a new religion was starting to take hold, that being of Christianity. For Christians, the question of the birth was never the question. There was countless scriptures of proof that Jesus obviously did exist, and one might still argue today, well, what difference does it make when he was born? I'm just trying to tie the date back to when many consider Jesus Christ's birth date. By the 4th century, however, it became increasingly impossible to ignore the when of when he was born. Scholars, monks, holy men searched scripts and scrolls were all combed over, yet no mention of a date could be found associating a true birth date of the Christ child. Only what I shared earlier, that shepherds were in the field tending their flocks at night, followed the star, therefore we think it was another time of the year. Now Rome was split, some clinging to the old beliefs, the forward thinkers into new Christianity. Both sides would fight brutally to defend their beliefs and their customs. So, why not merge? For the new Christian movement, they knew it would be impossible to stop other Romans and other pagan celebrations. Still, they needed a birth date celebration, besides Easter, obviously the first Christian holiday. So in the 4th century, it was declared Mithra, the sun, S-U-N, god, was believed to be born on December 25th, and it was the most important celebration of all of Rome at the time. Jesus, the son, S-O-N, of God, would also celebrate his birthday on that sacred date. This way, all of Rome could celebrate in slightly different manners, but on the same day, essentially for the belief that light would carry us through the dark winter solstice and the darkest times ahead, to live again. The same way as Jesus was born, died, and reborn to live again. Funny how that all works out. Cold hard facts, folks. Very, very seldom is anything really new. It is only reinvented with a twist, until enough time passes when the former is forgotten.
You got to give early Christians some props in realizing that if they wanted to convert people, they couldn't completely obliterate what was already there.
That was mind-boggling. It's like so simple, but it works. And in today's society, I don't think we would ever have that.
No, if you were to start a new church today, or, you know,
anything.
Let me take that. Yeah. If you were to start any kind of movement, you would 100% want to obliterate what was already there.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to incorporate it because that's just the way we are as people now. We're very selfish and everything has to be ours.
About us. Yeah.
Folks in England would eventually exchange the image of St. Nicholas for that of Father Christmas, who appeared as early as the 15th century. Now, Father Christmas was depicted as a large bearded man in green or scarlet robes lined with fur. If you remember your Christmas story, the Christmas Carol, think of the Ghost of Christmas Present, with the big giant of a man, you know, with food and all that. Now, he typified the spirit of good cheer at Christmas, bringing peace, joy, good food, good wine, and revelry, as well as gifts for the children of England.
So we have this more Christian adopted trademarks of Christmas I wanted to touch a little bit more on. The new Christians in Rome had adopted December 25th, the date of the pagan Rome Mithra's birthday, and it seemed to work quite well for the Christ child. So they decided the best way to get more acceptance and hopefully increase membership by adopting other pagan traditions for what would become known as Christmas. Now, for the Norse people, we would adopt their evergreen trees being brought inside and decorate them first with apples. You know, red apples. This was the Christians' little tidbit to dot the I, so to speak, on a detail, tying it to religion and the red apple from the Garden of Eden. These apples later evolved to become Christmas ornaments, early on being hand-blown red glass, still kind of tying to that apple color. Similar Holly plants were often brought with spiked green leaves and bright red berries. Now, this would be adopted by the new Christians as Christ's crown of thorns, the spiked green leaves as the thorns, and the red berries as blood. The early Christian church was actually pretty laid back and were quite happy to be accepted. Their beliefs was basically let the people celebrate whatever they want, whenever they want, as long as they paid tribute and, dare I say, lip service to the Christian way, then let them be. And for the most part, it worked. Right up to the point when people, well, here's the people aspect Bill and I were just talking about, they pushed too far. Some started going back further into the old pagan ways, even more, pushing away the beliefs of Christianity, going back to the drunken rivalry, the beating on of doors or shops or businesses, demanding supplies, not to mention a Halloween-esque mask-wearing celebration. Orgies were in the street, often on the front porches of the cathedral churches.
You're looking at me as if you don't approve.
This is people. This is exactly what we were just talking about. The Christian church perhaps was a bit too accepting because each year this just kept getting crazier and crazier and more out of control. Things were getting so much out of control in Rome. At Christmas, you had this religious drinking costume orgy that the English Puritans finally banned altogether, and they said, we will have no more of the celebration of Christmas. Now, by the Middle Ages, Christianity had almost entirely replaced the former pagan religions of Europe. On December 25th, the bells would sound at such places as Notre Dame and Salisbury cathedrals to call forth congregational masses for Christ's Mass, soon to be called Christmas. But the streets of England prior to 1800, if you had found yourself there prior on December 25th, you wouldn't have recognized it. There was nothing today that we associate with Christmas. The streets were a spectacle of parades and drunkenness and frolic, complete with costumes and masks. You might assume it's Mardi Gras or Halloween or maybe even New Year's, but definitely not Christmas. It was full-blown circus of chaos, front porches and streets becoming homes to hundreds of drunkards sleeping off the night before. Couples ran half naked through the streets performing the most unholy of acts, sometimes, again, just outside one of the Gothic cathedral churches. One peasant or a beggar would be selected by the city to be the Lord of Misrule, causing all kinds of amuck.
I want that title.
I would love that role for the month. The peasants were permitted their once-per-year power grab from the rich shop owners and the elite. Groups would go around the neighborhood, knock on the front door, and the lord and the lady invited the less fortunate folk inside their home. Now, these peasants could demand their very best.
Could you imagine any semblance of this happening in modern-day society?
Never.
I mean,
never.
They'd have armed security at the frickin' door.
And again, the lords and the ladies of the house welcomed the peasants. It wasn't, let me in, I'm going to kill you at this point. It was, hey, can you help us out? We're less fortunate. Oh, come in. And you could demand the best beer, the best food, the best anything that they had, and they would give it to you.
I think at one point in time, society in general had a little more humility. Anymore, you have rich people. Here's a good example. Someone ran this scenario through Grok, Elon Musk's AI. There are two paths that Elon Musk can take to get to a meeting. On one of these paths, there are a bunch of children, and to take that path, those children must be killed so that he can freely walk down that path.
Wow.
The other path is a wild path, and if he goes down that path, his clothes are going to get dirty, he's going to be disheveled, and when he arrives at his meeting, he will be less than perfect. And the Grok AI said, by all means,
kill the children.
Elon Musk must take path A. The lives lost will more than be made up for by the good that Elon Musk will do.
Wow.
That is how rich people think of themselves these days.
Well, the lords and ladies opened their house freely and give the peasants whatever they demanded, their very best, and they would oblige. They give their best food, their best ale, their best clothing, livestock, whatever was asked of them in order to appease the group of vagabonds until they would leave. Now, what would happen to the lord and the lady of the home if the beggars did not leave happy, you might ask? Well, that's easy. It was like trick or treat of Halloween. They got a trick played on them. Very weird how Halloween and Christmas origins kind of blend.
Well, was that the Christmas song, Scary Ghost Stories and Tales of the Glories, or We Won't Go Until We Get Some?
Yeah, we won't go until we get some. Now, I mentioned Puritans and Christmas. I thought this was very interesting. I never realized it till I did the research. Puritans made Christmas illegal multiple times through history.
My wife was watching a YouTube video just the other day, and the guy was explaining that they literally passed laws that said you had to go to work on that day.
Yes.
Shops had to be open. Businesses
and
had to be open.
Churches were closed. Yeah. In the early 17th century, the rules of reform and winds of change were evident. A massive religious reform led by an Oliver Cromwell, who led a group of Puritans to overthrow the king in 1645. They wanted to stomp out many things that were in their mind of decadence, needed to be reformed. And on the top of that list was Christmas.
That pesky Christmas.
Pesky Christmas. By 1652, the Puritan movement outlawed Christmas altogether, a second time in history when Christmas was canceled, first in Rome, now in England. The new Puritan law demanded that businesses stay open on Christmas Day, and all churches were to be closed. I think Puritans seemed to have this deep attraction to many of these things. It was almost like they knew they would want this if they ever partook of it. So by making it illegal, it became more taboo so they wouldn't be baited to try it, kind of thing. Yeah, maybe that's just me.
But isn't it human nature for the thing you're told not to have? Don't push that button. Don't take that. Don't eat that.
Don't eat that cookie while I go in the other room, Bill. And
don't touch that. What the idea, the big red button. There's an old Ren and Stimpy. Don't touch the jolly candy-like button.
But try as the Puritans might to outlaw Christmas, it was kind of like the U.S. later on trying to outlaw liquor.
Yeah.
It simply went more underground. People had the desire, the hope to live through those dark winter months, surviving a celebration. The rebirth, the spring, simply could not be extinguished.
Underground Christmas sounds like it would be, I don't know, like a movie, a band.
It could be fun.
A punk Christmas band. Underground Christmas
band. Punk rocker Christmas. Well, so much to a point, just a few years later in 1656, a group of men of Canton, Canterbury passed a resolution stating, if we can't have our Christmas, then we would just as soon have our king back on the throne. And they got their wish. The monarch was reinstated with Charles II, and Christmas was restored with him, being allowed to exist again. It seemed England could live without a king, but not without their Christmas. The fight to an end to Christmas in England had been lost by the Puritans, but there was another way. They dreamed of the New World, one of their very own design, the new colonies of America, and in 1620, a small group of Puritan separatists landed there in Plymouth, Massachusetts. This group, even more orthodox than their brothers and sister Puritans of England, here in America, they hoped once and forever to rid themselves of the Christmas scourge. In 1659, they followed suit with their own laws forbidding the celebration of Christmas. Anyone caught exhibiting the Christmas spirit would be fined 5 shillings, a quite stiff penalty of wealth of the day. However, like in England, Christmas would not be an easy spirit to tame. Outlaw it if you will, but you won't stop it. In 1719, Boston Almanac, an ad there, while it doesn't say Christmas, on the date of December 25th, it does mention that do not let your children and servants run too much abroad at night, hinting to those who might come out practicing the old ways of Christmas. Now, the Puritans, solid in their foundation that they were going to stomp out Christmas, But not all the colonies were united in that belief of Christmas even. Captain John Smith, leader of Jamestown settlement in Virginia, wrote in the first diary, "Our first Christmas in America was a good one, with plenty of oysters, wild fowl, and good bread for Christmas." Now, shortly after the Revolutionary War and the independence of America from England, all things English fell out of favor, including, once again, our beloved Christmas. As a matter of fact, Congress signed a law into effect in 1789. The United States Congress was working in session on Christmas Day, and for the most of the next 67 years they would do so. At this time, many diary entries deliver a similar query: where are America's holidays at? Now, surely after all the country had suffered, given up, lost, the shunning of most of the former holidays dictated by the English crown, America found themselves with a pretty blank calendar for the year. And this got us to start looking at the American holidays that could be added, founded on Christianity. And we, of course, already had a religious holiday being Easter, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And at the end of the 1800s, the start of the 19th century, Christmas would be one such holiday that would be once again adopted, manipulated, reinvented, and somehow seemed to unite America, the new country that stood now in unison together. Now, it was decided by our founding forefathers, America's Christmas would not be the English circus parade of drunken parties and orgies, but nor would it be just another religious holiday added to the already existing Easter holiday on the calendar. It would invent its very own, and essentially reinvent Christmas for the entire world to follow. We jump to New York in 1820. It had already far exceeded its earlier backwater port town and become the center of American commerce. Now, this brought great wealth to some, and more importantly, a substantial wealth boost to what would become known as the new middle class. But also going on at this time, the Industrial Revolution had created a third, segregated, poorer class. And nowhere could it be so obvious the difference than right there on the small island of New York. The existence of these unemployed, poverty-inflicted, poor, simply could not exist without threatening the new middle-class stature that had been discovered. But during the time in New York in the 1820s, it became volatile, a powder keg, if you will, essentially, again, around Christmas. Millionaire tycoons flaunted their wealth all around. The people that worked beneath them kind of spilled into the new middle-upper class, and then sprinkled down to the middle class, then seemed to miss several steps and just plummet there to the lowest poverty classes. This evoked gang wars. Immigrants, many unemployed and starving families, fought, stole, and even killed for scraps of food. And it kind of united in protection of groups or clans defined by street maps of New York. Now, things continued to get more and more volatile right up to a point in 1828 when the first ever police officers were hired to patrol the streets for protection after a particularly brutal Christmas Day gang war. So we have Christmas, America's Christmas, to thank for our police squads essentially becoming. Now, this was the official first start to the professional police force in America. And again, we have Christmas to thank for it in this weird, twisted way. I came across a newspaper notice, and it says, "No church on Christmas." Now, this was back in the mid-centuries, 1850s to be precise. Victorian Christmas could be seen almost everywhere in America. The homes, the shops, the streets, but definitely not in one spot, the church. The church had fought hard up to the 1850s, since the origins of Christianity in Rome, to not be involved with Christmas, outlawing it on several occasions throughout history. Most of the Americas at this time was Protestant, and Protestants had avoided Christmas like the plague for years. Yet many of the congregational members began to ask the age-old question of why. Various church groups, Baptists, Presbyterians, Catholics, Episcopalians, found themselves all wondering what, if any, thing is going on with the other churches? What are we supposed to be doing for Christmas? It's kind of a lost time. Nobody knew what to do. Now, this caused, in a weird way, peer pressure to produce something to do for those who wanted to come to church on Christmas, because it became more of a family affair. Dress up in your nicest clothes. You go out, especially in the New York area where you have the upper elite, the upper middle class, and the middle class. And so it caused them to kind of start rethinking about this and what more can we do to put a religious spin on the Christmas. Regardless, by the 1950s, strictly a family affair, Christmas was back on the books. Eggnog would be up by the fire, Bing Crosby on the radio, and a pile of wrapped packages beneath every tree of every home. The joy of Christmas became opening a mystery gift from someone who thought enough of you to get you something. And again, it was a time where handmade gifts were actually preferred. This was something that the new industrial age wanted to take from the families. If you handmade stuff, they didn't make as much money off of you, let's be honest. So what twists can we put if we only had a spokesmodel, aka enter Santa Claus, to come and help us with selling items? But let's put a twist on it, that you're gift giving. So essentially, you're not spoiling anyone. Santa is providing these deep discounts to save your family money, Bill, to be able to buy things that make your family happy for the entire year.
As an aside, it's sort of related. I used to work with someone who hated the idea of Santa Claus because they couldn't stand that their daughter might believe that this cool thing she had gotten
Came from
not
Santa, not them.
Not them. She wanted credit for the things that she did.
Well, I'll be honest, Sarah and I have talked about that, my wife Sarah, when like the Nintendo Super NES came out. You know, there's a chunk of money back then, and we saved our money, and we got the kids that for Christmas. And those type of items generally Santa helped out with, and Santa's name was on it, we'll put it that way.
We usually labeled the nicest gift of the year as from Santa.
Yes. So this became a buying frenzy because obviously the more packages you gave, the more you had to go buy. Many will say Santa has taken Christ out of Christmas. That is actually a slippery slope. For one unknowing, that's a large assumption that Christ was ever intended to be the center of an American Christmas. According to history, it was a time of charity, to stop, to listen, to observe, be kind, be familiar with those who have less, those that are less fortunate, and share to help them. Early American Christianity adopted the holiday that shared many things of the past, but was actually founded during the Industrial Revolution, which clearly divided the high, the middle, and the lower classes. We reinvented Christmas with a head nod of reverence to the Norse, the Celts, Germany, English, and eventually even our own Victorian Americans. But regardless of your thoughts or beliefs about Christmas, no one can ignore the importance it has to America and the world.
Well, as the British colonies in North America were formed, immigrants brought their traditions with them, and the Dutch Sinterklaas was anglicized into Santa Claus as early as 1773.
I don't know if it's just me, I love Sinterklaas. I almost wish we would have kept Sinterklaas. I like that name.
The American Santa became a figure all his own, and at first was described as a thick-bellied Dutch sailor with a pipe and a green winter coat. He was described this way in Washington Irving's History of New York in 1809, and the poem Old Santa Claus and With Much Delight in 1821. But the 1823 poem A Visit from St. Nicholas, or 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, brought us the Santa Claus that we know today, establishing him as a plump, jolly old elf in a red suit, traveling in a sled pulled by reindeer, dropping down chimneys to deliver toys to the well-behaved children of America. The original reindeer names were Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Dunder, and Blixen.
Dunder and Blixen?
Blixen. Dunder and Blixen were old Dutch words for thunder and lightning. Now these would be replaced with the German-sounding Donner and Blitzen.
Did not know that.
By 1845, Kris Kringle would become a common alias of Santa Claus, derived from Christkindl, German for Christ child. The American Santa traveled back to Europe by the 1850s, where Santa Claus and Father Christmas would become one and the same. Santa's residence at the North Pole came from a Thomas Nast illustration in the December 29, 1866 issue of Harper's Weekly, a political magazine based in New York City, as well as a poem by George P. Webster published in a collection of Nast's works that said Santa's home was near the North Pole in the ice and snow. The idea of a Mrs. Claus began in the mid-19th century, particularly in the 1889 poem Goody Santa Claus on a Sleigh Ride by Catherine Lee Bates. Now, Coca-Cola steps in, and we see the Coca-Cola Christmas commercials every year now.
Use Santa for decades.
They began to use Santa.
advertising.
They began to use Santa in their ads in the 1830s. And Santa's red suit was so immediately associated with Coke that the urban legend began to spread that Santa wears red and white just because those are the color of Coca-Cola.
Oh.
Not the case. Because Santa was actually used as the mascot for beverages prior to Coca-Cola's usage. Santa receives millions of letters every year from children around the world with their Christmas wishes written in nearly every known language, including Braille. In 1927, Santa received his airplane pilot's license from Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Aeronautics, William P. McCracken. In the ceremony where he received his license, he was also given an official airways map to help him navigate through the sky on Christmas Eve, along with assurances from officials that lights would illuminate the sky that night to help him on his journey. Now, yearly, Santa is tracked by NORAD, a tradition that started in 1955 when Sears Roebuck intended to publish the Santa hotline number, but accidentally published the number for the Continental Air Defense Command.
Oops.
Experts have determined some of the specifics of Santa's journey, and these numbers are staggering. With 2.1 billion children around the world, and an average of 2.5 kids per household, Santa would have to make 842 million stops in 32 hours on Christmas Eve. So, account for time zones.
Yeah, right.
His journey would take 218 million miles while hauling an estimated 400,000 tons of gifts. Assuming each household leaves 2 cookies for Santa, he would consume around 374 billion calories, 33,000 tons of sugar, and 151,000 tons of fat in a single night.
Well, that's why he only works one day out of the year, and we give him the rest
recover.
of the days off.
I believe it might be time for a Christmas headline.
Christmas headlines.
I think you and I, from the sound of it, went very similar directions with our headlines this time.
And again, we will stress, we do not talk
No.
before the day of recording when we've already done all of our research.
All we do is say, here's the topic for next time.
Yep.
And that's it.
Go get it.
We might elaborate a little bit if one of us doesn't know about the topic. Like,
Yeah, sometimes the topic will stop me and I'll be like, what exactly?
yeah, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
Or we might send a link to an article to say, hey, this is what it is. But this time around, I think we both stumbled upon sort of the same thing. I think mine might work better first based on what we talked about.
By all means, go for it.
From BusinessInsider.com, dated December 12th, 2025, by Kate Notopoulos. I found a headline. I specifically looked for a headline about my favorite Christmas icon. I won't say second. I like Santa. I like, the image of Santa, but there is one character that at Christmas time, I think more accurately reflects me.
Green and fuzzy.
The Grinch is more popular than ever. There's a new McDonald's meal and tons of Christmas merch. Here's why it happened. It sort of looks into why the Grinch is suddenly such a big part of Christmas. The Grinch is by far, I think the Grinch reflects me at Christmas. I'm a grouchy SOB, the other 11 months of the year, but at Christmas time, I kind of,
Bill lets his hair
soften.
down.
So, the McDonald's Grinch meal with pickle salt fries is a big hit, selling out across the United States. The meal hit comes as licensed Grinch merch. Seems to be more popular than ever. But why? Why is the Grinch more popular than ever? Maybe it all comes down to this. He's a memeable one, Mr. Grinch. Look around. You may have noticed it seems like Christmas has gotten a lot more Grinchy.
Times are tough. Yeah.
Well, when you look at stores, there's just plush toys, decorations, neon light-up signs. There's Grinch clothing, shirts, pajamas for both kids and adults, throw blankets, socks, toys, even eyeshadow palettes to represent the Grinch.
To bring out your Grinchness.
It seems as if we've reached peak Grinch. So what's the deal with that? Well, on the one hand, of course, it's December, and Dr. Seuss's 1957 creation is relevant. It's a Christmas story. But it feels like it's more than that. More than simply a seasonal IP, the Grinch has multi-generational appeal and has endured for decades across a number of formats. There's, of course, the original book, the 1964 animated special, which I love to this day, that included the song You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch.
Love that.
There's the 2000 live-action movie, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, starring Jim Carrey.
Very good.
The 2018 animated version, Dr. Seuss's The Grinch. The Grinch has a strange online presence, too, where he's become a highly memeable figure in a way that his seasonal IP peers, such as, say, Buddy the Elf, hasn't. At the release of the 2018 animated movie, there was some strange Tumblr memeing of the character, partially, buoyed by the fact that he was being voiced by Benedict Cumberbatch, who was at the time a big Tumblr fandom heartthrob, or what was Benadryl Cabbage Patch. It's my favorite bastardization of that. The memorability of the Grinch extends to the Jim Carrey portrayal, where his grotesque visage and exaggerated movements are perfect for these grotesque and exaggerated times on the internet.
It.
But it's also the 1960s cartoon that is popular. There's a popular GIF of the Grinch. GIF. It starts with a G. I'm saying GIF. I'm not going to get into that argument. Of the Grinch's hair curling as he smiles, that works as a perfect reaction, image. And then there's the absurdity of Gen Z and Gen Alpha Online, where memes are increasingly meaningless. But isn't that the point? I mean, if you have kids and you haven't heard 6'7",
yeah, that's so 6'7".
It makes so meaningless. I don't even. But anyway, for a while last year, there was a meme of an image of the Grinch with his color changed to blue and the phrase "knee surgery tomorrow." Apparently, a huge hit with middle schoolers.
Go figure.
But there's something about the Grinch that appeals not just to little kids, but to teenagers and younger adults. And you can see some of that reflected in the merch. In 2023, Adidas released Grinch-inspired sneakers for men. In 2020, Kylie Cosmetics introduced a Grinch-themed holiday makeup line. And this year, Nike has a Grinch shoe, which NBA player Colin Gillespie wore on the court last month. The Grinch has become one of those characters that is ostensibly for kids, but has a teen appeal, a sort of hot topic aura like Hello Kitty, Jack Skellington, or Taz in the 1990s. This makes sense. He's naughty after all. While children might see the Grinch as a villain, adults can see his lack of holiday enthusiasm as, honestly, relatable.
Sincere. Well, my headline, as Bill kind of touched upon, was very oddly, weirdly related. In a very strange course of events, I inadvertently selected my headline for this podcast weeks before Bill even picked it and told me we were going to do this podcast. I just didn't realize it. I believe it ties in nicely to some of the same topics and chain of events of tonight's history of Christmas, if you will, and Santa Claus, which ultimately came down to the conclusion that Santa Claus was an invested super sales promoter to increase sales for major industry and later mega department stores. Heck, essentially the entire season of America's Christmas is a means to sell us more, possibly even with a hint of guilt if we do not participate. So my headline's a bit different, but it has to do with a national ad campaign that I happened to notice, my wife did, that Walmart is doing. And when I first saw it, I think it was maybe technically the second time it aired that I saw it, I looked over at Sarah.
These are the commercials with Walton Goggins as the Grinch.
Yes.
And
I'm
he
like,
keeps his black hair.
Everything is Grinch.
Grinch.
And I'm looking at her and it's like, are they coming out with a new movie this year?
You would have thought.
Or did I miss? Is it at the anniversary or something? Well, I looked it up. It's technically 121 years old today.
Well, isn't it
as of 2025?
20th anniversary of the Jim Carrey Grinch?
Now, there might be for that.
Or 25th, maybe?
It might be for that. But I went back, I thought maybe it's the 125th is what was in mind. But no, 121. not normally a number you would associate with a big shindig. So that didn't seem to align either, and I thought, well, maybe there is a new movie coming out. And I did remember something about The Cat in the Hat is actually being filmed now. So I thought, well, maybe they're going to release it. Maybe, why haven't I heard about this? And I went and looked. That doesn't come out until 2026 next year for Christmas. So it's like, okay, well, that's not the reason Walmart's doing this. So I thought to myself, well, regardless, it's very well done. I like it. It's nostalgic. It's playful. It's fun. Just the ingredients that might increase cash flow of sales. Just the ingredients we talked about in tonight's podcast, where everything kind of aligns and unites America under a banner, if you will. Maybe the Grinch banner for Christmas. So I dove into it a little bit more once I found out we were doing this incident, and I thought, I wonder if I could twist that around to my headline. So I simply went over to the old Google, and I typed in, why is Walmart using the Grinch in their Christmas campaign? And here's what Mr. Google said. Walmart is using the Grinch for its 2025 holiday campaign to leverage nostalgia, create emotional connections, and stand out in a crowded retail market, all while promoting its brand product selection and digital tools through the Dr. Seuss-inspired Who Knewville theme with actor Walton Goggins.
Love Walton Goggins. If you don't know who he is, he was the villain on Justified. He was the ghoul in Fallout.
And like you said, he keeps his black hair and everything.
It basically just looks like him.
The campaign taps into that familiarity with the Grinch's story of finding joy in giving, relating to Walmart's goal of showcasing its value and convenience for holiday shoppers. Might say, what are the key reasons for this? Well, Google answered that too. Here are the key reasons. Number 1, nostalgia and familiarity. The Grinch is a beloved, recognized character, creating an immediate emotional hook for shoppers, as noted by Walmart's Vice President of Creativity. Number 2, Who Knewville, the extension, is a natural evolution of Who Knew platform, expanding it from general product awareness to a festive, magical setting event for shopping. Number 3, relatability and current economy. A character known for a Christmas of nothing becoming something can resonate with customers, like almost all of us, facing economic pressures unlike other traditional holiday stories. Nailed that. Promoting digital tools. The campaign integrates Walmart's apps and services using all the newest technology, showing how shoppers can so easily find deals and gifts so quickly, you don't even have to leave the house. You can just order them from your phone or your laptop right there in time for the holiday season. They'll deliver it to your house, for Pete's sake. And I bet it's the Grinch and his sleigh that is delivering Walmart's goods.
I do all my Christmas shopping on Amazon.
Guilty there. Star Power. Walton Goggins, already part of the Who Knew campaign, brings cultural relevance, especially with the online buzz about his resemblance to the character. And
I never thought he looked like the Grinch.
No. Broadening the perception. It's a part of a larger effort to update customer perception, highlighting Walmart's wide assortment and digital convenience beyond just a physical store, going beyond and so much more, according to Adweek. So I'm wondering, did Santa just get the boot by the Grinch? It kind of seems that way at Walmart.
Well, as we're sitting here talking, it just occurred to me, do you think they picked Walton Goggins because of his name to be associated with Walmart?
Hadn't thought about that. Yeah. Sam Walton Goggins.
Just make sure it stays Walton.
Yeah, Walton. I don't know. It's a weird time. Was it time for questions, Bill?
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Bill, my question to you for this episode is twofold. What has been your favorite and your least favorite Christmas?
I think we talked about this a little bit. My least favorite Christmas was last year.
Last year?
There was an incident where my dog bit someone.
Oh, yes.
I was going through a series of urinary tract infections, and I had an appointment on December 23rd.
Wow.
where they took a camera and took a look at my bladder, and they took the shortest route.
The shortest route.
And that was awkward.
Maybe not of least resistance, but the shortest route.
Under ordinary circumstances, I would have thought that the nurse was an attractive woman, but I don't want to talk to her ever again because
Thought you were going to say she looked like Helga from Germany or something.
That was a compromising moment to not be involved in. Yeah, there was just such a bad Christmas that year. Again, I at the Christmas dinner table, I think everybody in the family at one point or another had shed some tears just because, we had the beloved family pet that we were thinking may have to be put down even.
Yeah.
We put him through obedience training, but that cost us like $800. He's still a grouchy dog, but I don't think that he'd hurt anybody, and he listens a lot better than he did back then. We had inherited a dog we hadn't intended, so we had another dog in the house.
I remember that too.
Had to talk to a police officer. It was, oh man, it was
you had a rough Christmas that year.
And then when you roll in just a couple weeks later, my wife was involved in a T-bone accident and totaled her car.
I remember we were in Virginia, and I hadn't heard from you, so I'd kind of reached out and touched base, and you're like, yeah, Leda was in a car wreck. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't know anything about it. Is she okay?
No, it was such a rough
And you're like, dude, when you get back, I'll just catch you up.
It's
got so much stuff.
So bad at Christmas. I mean, as far as best Christmas, I mean, there's been a lot of good Christmases.
That was the same
I think,
one. But is there one that just really stands out?
Really, I think it would probably be the last one before my mom passed away. My little girl she wouldn't have even been born. No, I take that back. My little girl would have just been born. No, got to get my years straight. She was born. She was around. But it would have been the last year before my mom passed away, just because the fact it was the last one that we got to spend with my mom.
Right.
My mom had got her cancer diagnosis, and she had looked at the prognosis and saw that it was, she knew that it was going to be her last Christmas.
Right.
And so my mom kind of went all out, but it was all my kids, it would have been with my brother and sister.
All the family, extra special.
It would have been the last time we were all together in that respect. I mean, obviously the tradition has evolved since then, and now Christmas is at my house. Christmas Eve is at my house.
Now you got expanded family even.
Yeah, now, I have a daughter-in-law that's part of that. So,
all right. Well, for me, let me start with my least favorite, because I'm going to be straight up. Yeah, it's a total Debbie Downer story. For sure. Even more so even than the Christmas story. You don't have to worry about shooting your eye out with a BB gun, but I was about 9 or 10. Much like you, I was kind of struggling with finding that exact time it was, but I'm going to say about 1980. And I had wanted to get a puppy for some time. And Mom and Dad had taken me to pick out this bouncing, very active, brown and white, little cute Cocker Spaniel puppy that was my Christmas gift. Now, best I can recall, I had him for just a few days, at the most a week before Christmas. I mean, I well knew this was my Christmas present and all that. I named him Snoopy, after one of my favorite cartoon dogs of the Peanuts series, Snoopy. And so you might say, well, what in the world's wrong with this Christmas dream? This is the story that,
I can only imagine that, Snoopy didn't have...
It went downhill very quick. We quickly noticed this energetic little loving puppy just within days, maybe even hours, started acting odd. Without getting into all the details, you could tell he was in pain, not feeling well, started passing blood. We raced him to the vet on, I believe it was Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, which I'm sure wasn't cheap. And we were told essentially he was dying of a new disease known as parvo.
Wow.
In the late 70s, early 80s, that was a highly, highly contagious virus among dogs. And it could rapidly take the dog over in a period of weeks and kill them. It was going through kennels and wiping out, hundreds and hundreds of animals. For obvious reasons, that's by far my least favorite. And I won't say worst. I didn't want to use the word worst because I did get a puppy. It was very short-lived.
Kind of ironic, strange. I don't know the right word, but both of our least favorite Christmases involve our dog.
Yeah. Now on to happier times. My favorite Christmas, it was a hard one to pick, kind of like you said. I had a lot of good Christmases. And it's hard still to kind of understand why, but I will call it the perfect combination of things. We had, it was cold, we had snow, it covered the ground. And I remember one year, it was either 1982 or 83 that really stands out to me. And of course, I would have been like 12 or 13. Very much still a kid at heart, approaching those teenage years, but I still love toys. Heck, I still love toys today, let's be honest. My grandpa, which I had called Poppy, had passed just a few years before, but Grandma Cook still lived at their little farmhouse, a little quaint house, and she had worked for weeks baking candies and cookies, and it lined all the back rooms with the seasonal tables she put up, covered the top of this, the big old Chester freezers like you see serial killers have that put bodies in. Yeah, that entire top was all filled with cookies and candies and stuff. Maybe the reason I'm a diabetic today, I don't know. But that was part of the allure. They had that warm morning furnace, one of those big metal monstrosities that had the fire that would flicker up on the top, that if you dare came within 12 inches, it would probably burn the skin literally off your flesh. But it had a blower on it, and it kept the little house very warm. And it just was one of those heats that just warmed you to the bone. So we had all the smells of the cooking, the desserts. We had family down from Kansas City, my uncle, my aunt, my cousin, which we never see anymore. We were all gathered together. It was, family was represented. And it probably has to do with the time frame, which is known as to toy collectors as the golden era of toys. I mean, 82, 83. You got Star Wars is still new. You got G.I. Joe. You got Masters of the Universe. You got Transformers. You got all these major toy lines. And I was spoiled. I was an only child. Grandma and Grandpa had 2 grandkids, me and my cousin. And Grandma always spoiled us too. So I had every one of those things to check the list off. I had Masters of the Universe, He-Man, Skeletor, Panther. I had, I think Empire Strikes Back had just come out. I had the Snow Speeder and all that. So we had more toys that we could possibly, my cousin and I played with. And it just was that perfect combination. To me, that is what I have longed for Christmas, that I always tried to get my kids a small sampling of that, because to me, kids, I don't know what Christmas is to you, but this is the best representation, and if I can get a chunk of it over to you, I feel successful. That was kind of it.
I think that shows a stark difference in the way we were raised, because I had, me and my brother. It was me and my brother growing up, and my parents got divorced when I was very young, and my mom, we lived on welfare. And so we didn't get much. As a matter of fact, my mom would routinely open the Christmas gifts before Christmas and wrap individual components so that we would have more presents to open. And talk about messing up Christmas. My mom made sure that I understood that there was no such thing as Santa when they got divorced, because it was going to impact my Christmas, which as a child, I would absolutely not have noticed one way or the other. But this was like 5-6 years old. My mom was not very tactful with the way she handled it.
To your psyche.
But yeah, I probably don't spend as much as my mom did, I think sometimes, or maybe I don't buy as much. Let's put it that way. Like money wise, I'm sure that I spend more than she did, but
wouldn't be that hard in today's society.
Yeah, no kidding. But I always try to just make sure, I always try to make sure that all my kids have the same number of gifts, which we just didn't do this year.
We've always tried to do that with our two. Yep.
But
and that's tough sometimes, because this one's worth more. You paid more, and it's like,
well, exactly. And as the older my kids have gotten, the more expensive the gifts have become, to the point where some years it's just been like, well, we absolutely can't buy that.
Well, heck, you could almost at this point go to Walmart, buy some groceries, spend $500 and put a bow on it, and say, "There's everybody's Christmas." Yeah.
So for you, I think if you're like me, this time of year kind of hits you different. Maybe I find myself, again, like the Grinch, my heart grows 3 sizes. I find myself tipping a little more when I go out to eat. I find myself being a little more generous, a little more willing to part with my money. Most of the year, the cost of groceries is enough for me to be like, well, it looks like we're going to starve to death because we're not going to buy food.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, totally with you there.
What are your favorite aspects? Your favorite song, your favorite show, your favorite whatever about Christmas?
I will tell you, the older I get, and especially with recent health issues, I have become extremely nostalgic. I've always been nostalgic, but I mean, you can ask my wife. I'm to the point of driving her nuts, watching old movies, and listening to old songs. I cannot imagine Christmas without watching at least one of the cartoon Christmas TV series that we grew up with. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Frosty the Snowman, the Peanuts Christmas special. It's not Christmas unless I watch one of those around that with Christmas. And I'm up until this year, which has been questionable for obvious reasons of health and money and everything. But for the last 5 years, we've went to Virginia and spent with the grandkids. And I have very much enjoyed sharing some of those memories and those older shows. And ironically, they have held up at least to grandchild's aspects, 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years later on some of them. And it's becoming more of the same. It's, again, doing my own research, I figured out that American Christmas was a way for us, one, to deal with our psyches of being upper middle class and how we treat those less fortunate. Christmas to me is about taking the time to help someone else. And we're all in different points of life. To some, that might be, I'll buy you a new car for Christmas, while others, it might be, hey, I can make a meal for you tonight and I'll bring it over for supper.
Yeah.
To me, both of those are equally as valuable. And honestly, the one that gives from the heart to me is more of a closer friend or family member. To me, that has more meaning. So I guess I'm very nostalgic old floof, and I like the older ways, and I'm finding, I think we definitely lost sight of that, or I feel like we have in society. So, what about you?
We have to watch The Grinch, the original, not the Jim Carrey one. I've seen the Jim Carrey movie. It's fine. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But the original Grinch with Boris Karloff narrating, we watch that every year. And my favorite Christmas song is Holly Jolly Christmas, even though I hate the Rudolph show now. Well, you talk about, I remember watching them growing up, but as an adult, I can't stand any of them except for the Grinch.
I love the old stop clay animation.
Man, I cannot stand those anymore.
Love those.
Other than I do like the Heat Miser and Snow Miser songs. I still in those sequences are pretty good. But for me, yeah, it's having my family all together as my family ages, and my son, he went to college,
grow up,
and now he lives up in Kansas City. So it's nice to know that everybody will be there Christmas morning, and I don't know how many more years they'll have of that, because I'm sure once they have kids of their own, that Christmas will be at their house, for them.
Right.
And so that changes.
I was going to say, I don't know if you're to the point in life yet, because I've got a few years on you. I have got to the point where I'm thinking, my kids are they've been married, they're doing their own things. I always watched movies and shows, and I heard about these old people that were left at their house and their kids have moved off. And of course, they got their own lives. They're celebrating their Christmas with their new families. And you got the old man and the old woman sitting there with a cup of coffee on Christmas, and they're wondering if anybody's going to show up. And,
there's a holiday commercial. You may have seen it.
The old Folgers commercial?
No.
Okay.
It's a new one this year, I think. I don't think I've seen it before this year. But it's an older couple, and they're getting ready to climb in their car. And I think it's a car commercial, honestly. But they're getting ready to climb in their car, and they're talking about memories, and you remember how things used to be. And it goes through a montage of taking their kids on trips.
I've seen this. Yes, it is a car commercial.
At the end, they show up at their kid's house, and they're both older, gray in their hair.
Yep.
And it's like, hey, how long have you guys been here? And they've been reminiscing about holidays past. That brought a tear to my eye the first time I saw it.
Yeah.
Because I'm just because my daughter, this is her last year of high school. She's fixing to go to college, and I think she's going to move up and live with her brother in Kansas City and go to UMKC, or KCMU, whatever they call it. But university up there in Kansas City. And, because she's a Missouri resident, she qualifies for the stuff and all that. So she's going to move up there. And so that'll be two of my kids that won't be in the house.
Yeah.
My middle kid, he's still living at home. He's still trying to figure out what comes next for him. Mm-hmm. And so that's fine. If he wants to be at home, he wants to be at home. I'd rather have them all at home. If I could have my druthers.
Yeah.
I never understood those people who were like, the minute you turn 18, you're
out of my house.
Because I was never that way. My mom wasn't that way either.
We weren't either.
So,
matter of fact, both of our children left and came back and lived with us for a period of time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so again, to have everybody home at Christmas is just, yeah.
It's magic. It's magical.
And
you can't put a value, you can't put a price on it.
And opening the presents and who's going to hand them out and the stock. We still do the stocking thing. My kids watched me pack the stockings last year. Take the candy and put it in there, and because it was like they're old enough to know, so
Right.
it's not a thing, but we still do stockings.
Well, and you're training them to be able to do that role when the time comes for them.
And that's like I said, like me and my son were talking, and I know, they're gonna have a kid. I think their plan is 4 or 5 years down the road, once they've kind of established themselves and they're comfortable. But I'll get to do the grandparent thing somewhere down the line.
But there'll be a time it'll be you and Aleda in the house all by yourself.
Yeah, on Christmas.
And
I'm not ready for that.
I'm not ready for that. I'll be honest, I'm not ready for that. But
when I was growing up, Christmas Eve was at my grandma's house. That was our family tradition. Everybody went to my grandma's house. And I mean everybody, aunts, uncles, cousins, everybody in the immediate, in Missouri, essentially. Some years my uncle would come from California, and everybody, but we would all gather in my grandma's living room, and everybody bought gifts for everybody. And you spent hours just handing out gifts.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, this was from, Uncle Mike and Aunt Tina. This is, whatever. You would just hand out these gifts, and it would take hours, and you'd have like I don't want to say the meal, but you had like finger foods and snacks and stuff. And then on Christmas, everybody went back to Grandma's house after Christmas morning for Christmas dinner. And that was the full, turkey, mashed potatoes, all the fixings. And you brought, as a kid, I remember you were allowed to bring one gift, and you
we had
got
that
to hang
rule.
out with the cousins.
You bring one toy.
Yeah.
Pick one toy.
You hung out with the cousins, and it was one of the few times that the family was all together. It was that and Thanksgiving were the only times we were all together growing up. And so this time of year is very nostalgic for me to remember those.
We're turning into our sappy parents.
We're old. We're old now.
I guess
and
that's
we have kids.
to be
We have adult
expected.
kids.
Yeah.
And all of my as effective this week even. Yeah, it would be this week. I will officially have no children who are legally children. So my daughter turns 18.
That hurts.
Yeah, my kids will all be adults after this week.
And we were talking about commercials. Honestly, I haven't seen it this year, but they usually play the Folgers coffee commercial, and I love those. Like where the military son
they
would
come
return home, surprise the parents, and you wake up to the fresh brewing cup of Folgers coffee.
And it's weird.
But
how
again, it's all about
selling you things.
sales.
But it's weird even how a Christmas commercial will grab you, and you'll be like, we saw one the other day, and I can't even remember what it was now, but I was like, I haven't seen that commercial in a long time. I can't believe they're still... Oh, it was the M&Ms with Santa.
Oh.
He is real.
Yeah,
I
he
was
is
like,
real.
How long has that commercial been around?
I think it was last year, the old Coca-Cola. I'd like to teach the world
Wow.
to sing.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I haven't seen this in decades. And maybe it was kind of like a flashback, but they played that.
They prey on your nostalgia.
Yep.
They make you remember a simpler time, and they absolutely... Like, you feel bad if you don't get a gift. Oh, I got to get you something. I got to
the guilt trip.
We still do a Christmas Eve. My brother and sister and then her wife and my niece come up, and we do Christmas Eve, and we have some food. We have a dinner, and we do Christmas Eve just with my immediate family now. And then
And that's another thing. It's a much smaller scale. I remember us, or at least my age growing up, you mentioned grandmas. Grandmas was who everybody went to their house.
Yeah.
They did the family reunion picnics, and after that. But when grandma passed away, we just kind of lost that.
When my grandma passed, that tradition started to end. Well, even before that, my grandma was bedridden for a few years before she passed. But we were still getting together every year for Christmas. As a matter of fact, I can remember when that tradition broke, and it's almost my fault in a way. This is a horrible story, but I'll tell it. My daughter was born December 20th.
Okay.
Via C-section.
Right.
That's a surgery. It's a
Yeah.
major surgery.
Yeah.
You're in the hospital for 3 days. So you don't come home till December 23rd. We had a family get together Christmas Eve every year, December 24th.
The next day.
And we called my mom and we said, hey, can we push it back and maybe do it a couple days after Christmas? My in-laws had come in because, again, we had a new baby and they wanted to see their new grandkid. I had 3 additional people staying in my house, and I do not have a very big home. And my wife had just had this major surgery. She was sleeping in a chair in the living room with the little baby bassinet beside her with my daughter. And my cousin absolutely lost her mind over the idea that we might not do this on Christmas Eve. She was planning on it. This is a family tradition. And I said, look, my wife just had a baby.
Yeah.
And she just got home. I've got family here from out of state. They'll be going home in a couple days. It just might be better if we push it off to the weekend, whenever. And
Seems reasonable request.
She was just livid. And I just said, well, look, you guys go ahead and do it and just set our stuff aside. We'll pick it up at Mom's house. I said, we're not going to be able to make it. There's no way.
Oh.
So my cousin calls and she's like, well, can we do it at your house? Now, again, I have a little house. I don't have much room. And I said, no, there's just no way. It's too crowded. I said, my wife, we have the bassinet in the living room.
The worst thing there is you have a wife that's obviously still very discomforted.
Yes.
And everyone's at your house. You have no place to run. You have no place to go to retreat.
Yeah.
Everyone is now at your house. That's bad. That's horrible.
And it was like, no, I just don't have the room for this at my house. Well, my husband's family, they have a single wide trailer and they get their whole family in there. And there's probably 20, 30 people. I was
There's
like,
the guilt trip.
Okay, that's fine, but that's not happening at my house. So things quiet down. I'm resigned to, we're not going to have Christmas Eve. It is what it is. I'm such a jerk.
Bill canceled Christmas.
I get a call a couple hours later. It's my cousin's husband.
Uh-oh.
And he goes, hey, you got a minute? I'm like, yeah, go ahead. What do you need? You're not going to change your mind, are you? I said, no, I'm not. I'm an adult. I have my own
I'm here
family.
dealing with my wife, and she's gone living.
My in-laws here. I have, a new
you
baby.
got to change your mind?
He's like, you're not going to change. And I said, no, I'm not changing my mind. He goes, well, I just want you to know. And I will say, I don't usually swear in front of my family, and we don't swear on the podcast. And he goes, I just want you to know that I had to talk her out of just showing up at your place.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, well, that would have been a really bad effing idea. I said, that would not have gone well for anybody.
Take a hint.
My cousin didn't talk to me for years.
Oh, wow.
We ran into each other at a public event. She talked to my wife. She talked to my kids.
Not Bill.
Not a word to me. She didn't talk to me, as a matter of fact, until my daughter ended up in the hospital a few years later. She was 4 or 5 at the time. She was in the hospital. We were in the hospital for a week, just over a week, I think. Doctors weren't even sure if she was going to make it at one point or another. That was the first time my cousin talked to me after that.
Wow.
That was the last time we had a proper Christmas Eve get-together in my family. After that, it was just me and my mom and my brother and sister. And, since my mom passed now, my brother and sister and them come to my house. And we just keep it small. We just keep it to the people who aren't going to throw a fit if you inconvenience them.
We always went to Grandma on Christmas Eve. Now we go to Sarah's mom's on Christmas Eve since Grandma's passed. And then Christmas Day, we always put our foot down because we had 2 kids of our own and we wanted to have Christmas Day in our house. Because I remember, to your point, you're allowed to take 1 package.
Yeah.
This is Christmas Day. I want to be able to play with whatever I got. So we made sure our kids were home for Christmas Day. But like I said recently, as family changes, now we got grandkids, and I feel bad because we leave family here, but that's the only time I'm going to get to have Christmas with the grandkid. It's tough.
All the way up until the year my mom passed away, we went to my mom's for Christmas dinner, and we told the kids the same thing. If you want to bring something, you can bring one thing, but don't bring, whatever. It was just, you get older, your family changes, things change, traditions change.
Yep.
I still try to maintain the Christmas Eve tradition. Again, like I said, we have the family over and we have a meal and we do the gifts and, we reminisce and tell stories and crack each other
I
up.
play some board games.
We usually don't.
No?
No, it's just too many
holidays
people.
was always a time for board games.
Too many people on Christmas Eve when you figure you got me and my 3 kids, my wife, my daughter-in-law.
You'd have to have a huge table.
My brother, my sister, her wife, my niece. There's just too many people to try that. And then, of course, my dog's running around. And again, I don't have a very big house. I know you haven't. I don't think you've ever been in my house, but it's not very
big. You've never been to my house.
I never have been. We are good friends here.
Good friends.
We've never
have
been to each
for
other's house.
years. Never been to each other's house. That's weird. Never thought about that.
We meet at a neutral third-party location, so we don't know where the other lives, just for safety's sake.
Just for safety, yep.
I don't want you to know where I live.
Santa Claus may be watching us or something. So.
As we close out this episode, normally Eric jumps in here and does the final salutation. This is our Christmas episode of the year. I say Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
And hope everybody has a good holiday. Things look kind of bleak. The world's not exactly great. We hope the best for everybody in the new year. And again, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever you celebrate this time of year. I am not one of those war on Christmas guys.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Enjoy your time that you have. Merry Christmas. You have family. Cling to them tightly. Enjoy every moment that you have with them. We hope that you've enjoyed this, and we know we kind of get a little long-winded and off, but that was kind of what this was all about, sharing kind of some private and intimate Christmas memories that Bill and I have had. Hopefully some of those have kind of stuck in with some of you, and maybe you have your own stories. But until next time, my friends, we thank each and every one of you for listening. Merry Christmas from Nightmares on the Lost Highway.
Hey, real quick, call to action. I think Eric would agree. We'd like to grow this. Nightmares on the Lost Highway.
Absolutely.
If you could, if you're listening on Apple, if you would go and give us a review and rate us. If you have some feedback, that's fine too. Whatever platform you're listening, follow us, rate us, give us some reviews. That helps get some recognition and gets our name out there.
We do have a Facebook page, Nightmares on the Lost Highway. You can easily find us if you want to communicate with us. If you want to share some possibilities for future podcasts with us, reach out. We want to talk with you guys.
I want to take a time to thank the people that helped bring this all together. Alex Tudor, you can almost call him our producer at this point. Sarah Tudor, who also helps with some of the technical stuff. I want to take a moment to extend thanks to Eric for letting us use his space to record in, kind of our makeshift studio.
I, in turn, would like to thank Bill for, one, putting up with me and using this camaraderie to do something we both very much love and enjoy doing, and thank Bill's family for allowing him to spend all the time to work and clean up our recordings and present them in what you hear in the final terms, the final edition, if you will.
And I'd like to thank all of you for continuing to listen. I know we've got some loyal followers out there. We do this as a labor of love, but we're happy that there are people that enjoy it hopefully as much as we do.
Thank you very much.